a subject comes up to which you've had some concern, and you turn your attention to it and you relitigate it. You, from your now position, try to go back and change something that you've lived before, and in doing so you take on the personality of those that you perceive are judging you, and you do the same thing to yourself. So you relitigate the experience, and you come to the conclusion that no matter what it was, and for whatever reason, that you were wrong in having that experience. But you're doing it in your now. You can't go back and relive it, and you can't go back and change it. But in your now, you can control the way you feel. So we just have a very straightforward question that we want to put to you. If your work is to do your best to get into the receptive mode, if your work is to do your best to feel about yourself as your inner being feels, if your work is to do your best to feel as good as you can feel in this moment, is there any value in going back to a time and retrying your case and finding yourself faulty and applying guilt upon yourself? Is there any value in doing that now? So you're not doing it on purpose? Is that what you're telling us?
Well, I guess the only value would be if I thought that I could release that from the past to be feeling better now.
You did release it from the past, because when the past was the past, it was released. But this is the present, and you've dragged something from the past that you don't want into the present. It's not about releasing the past. It's about focusing in the present. It's about in the present aligning with who you are. Mm-hmm. Esther had an experience where something happened and some people were unhappy with her, and now she's living the ramifications of their unhappiness. And for just a moment she was saying things like, I should have just done such and such, and then that led to a little bit to a, and before that I should have done that. So she's going back before the momentum, when the momentum was very small. If I just done something differently then, and then, and then, and then, and then. And once she sort of came out of it after a good night's sleep, we spoke to her with such clarity that she told others, Abraham yelled at me this morning. And what we said to Esther is, line up with what you know to be the truth of this situation. Line up with it as you mean for it to be. Don't water yourself down by trying to see someone else's point of view that you can never see. Stand in your knowing of what you know and line up with what you know to be. Now, what we really mean by that is stand up with the goodness that your inner being knows that you are. Stand up with the clarity that your inner being knows that you are. Stand with that knowing of who you are, and do not allow yourself to take on any garbage that anybody else from their inferior feeling, insignificant, vulnerable feeling selves that have been shining on you. Don't take that stuff on. But when you're feeling for the thought about them or about yourself or about anything that is in concert with that way your inner being feels about it, so that you are now in alignment with who you really are. Now as you stand in your now, sure, there's all kinds of stuff you've lived that maybe if you were living it again now you'd live it differently. But so what? None of that makes any difference. You can't get it wrong, and you'll never get it done. And the reason you can't get it wrong is because it's never done. You're always standing in a new and powerful now, and your inner being is always adoring you and knowing what you want and what the path of least resistance is for you to get from where you are to where you want to be. Your empowerment is a self-assigned experience, and you find it one good feeling thought at a time, one good feeling thought at a time, one good feeling thought at a time. And you will never get to who you are and to who you mean to be by regretting anything that you've ever experienced. You can't even remember what the particulars were of the incident when it came up. You don't even know what the energy dynamics of it were. You cannot from your now even remember what the momentum factors of energy moving were about. You've got to let the past go. You've got to let it be what it was for. What it was for was to fill your vortex full of who you really are. And now your purpose is singular. Line up with who you really are, you see. And when you do, you will discover the passion that the source within you has for all sorts of things that you have been assigning as inappropriate, because you've been guided by so many others who don't want you to follow your own passion. They want you to follow their path. They want you to be a slave to what they want. Sometimes they mean it, and sometimes they don't even know what they mean. But most people are very sloppy in their thinking. And you cannot be if you want to live happily ever after. You've got to think with precision by caring about how you feel. And then it doesn't take long before the momentum of your thoughts. There are so many rules and so many mindsets of the way you should behave, and so many people ready to stand and judge you as inappropriate if you don't jump through their hoops in the way they think that they need you to so that they can feel better, that so many people have gotten so separated from their own sense of well-being. They don't know who you are. Don't listen to them. And so our answer to you is that so many of you have begun to listen to those in authority around you rather than listening to the guidance that you were born with. Now, the next logical question would be, well, shouldn't it be set up differently? Shouldn't our guidance come through clearer? And we say, your guidance is very clear. You know what feels good. You know what feels bad. You can reach back to some of your earliest memories and you can remember that first gut-wrenching feeling that you got when somebody was pointing to you and calling you inappropriate. We would imagine that many of you could sit down and make a list of those kinds of experiences where little by little someone tried to convince you that you were not good, and in every case it was someone who had already convinced themselves that they were not good, you see. So what we want to say is, you were born with guidance, and now what we're hearing from so many of you is, but why didn't I use the guidance I was born with? And we say, rather than saying, why didn't I use the guidance I was born with, we would so much rather hear from you, I'm going to begin to use the guidance that I was born with. And then what happens is, then you stand in this powerful place where you have extracted from experience all of this contrasting experience that has launched incredible rockets of desire into your future. And now as you come into alignment, most of you, in nearly every case, say, every bit of that stuff that yesterday I said was horrible, I now feel appreciation for, because it gave me the clarity to desire, and now I am the receiver of that which I've desired, and my life is more because of it than it would have been otherwise. So the conversation that we want to have with you is not whether the system's right or not. It is, the conversation we want to have with you is, how can I, in my now, close the gap between my asking and receiving? How can I become so entrusting of the laws of the universe and so aware of my own vibrational countenance that I can get into this place where I just expect well-being to flow to me? And when you get to that place, then that eagerness returns. That's exactly how the little ones feel. Watch them. The feeling of coming back into alignment with who you are is an undeniable experience. And once you consciously make it, you never have to leave it again, you see. So the question that we're really hearing is, why does it happen? We say, stuff happens. You say, but shouldn't it be different? And we say, no, it's perfect. You say, but shouldn't it have been easier along the way? And we say, yes, but that was up to you. You say, but shouldn't it be easier now? And we say, yes, but that is up to you. In other words, we can sit here today, we can continue the struggle the rest of your physical life, or we can say, let's make peace with it. It is also a function of, from your broader non-physical perspective, wanting the contrasting experience in order to help you formulate your desires. You see, you just got to grasp this, that this is an evolving, expanding universe. This is not a universe where somebody's got it all figured out, and so here's this group of angels in heaven that have figured out the perfect life, and then they say, go forth, little ones, and just live as we've been living. It isn't that way. There must be expansion in order to continue to be existence, you see. And so with expansion comes contrast, and with contrast comes discernment. With contrast comes the ability to speculate, to mold, to anticipate. Look at it this way. If you were a chef in a well-stocked kitchen, you would be so much happier than if you were a chef in a kitchen that had 3 ingredients. In other words, a well-stocked kitchen doesn't mean you have to put it all in your pie, but it sure does give you a lot of other options, you see. Make peace with it. Yeah. Say, this contrasting world is what the expansion is all about.
The variety, the contrast is what puts the eternalness in eternity. And we were always born with guidance, and lament only for a little bit that you lost sense of your guidance. We don't think that any of you have lost sense of it as much as you think. We think you know when your feelings are hurt. We think you know when you're angry. We think you know when you feel disempowered. We think you know it. And we think it's time for you to take it back. But we think it's also time for you to reach the place where you really take it back. As long as you're blaming anyone or anything for anything, you're disempowered. And we're not just talking to you, we're talking to anyone. As long as you're blaming anyone or anything for anything, you are disempowered, because that says they have power over me, and no one does, because no one can vibrate for you. Law of attraction is lovingly delivering to everyone who asks the precise answer that they are able to hear. So never suffer over those who aren't getting your answers, because you can't even force feed them.